Back on Newsmaker Sunday with Neville Cramer. He's retired special agent INS, and it's great to get this perspective because, you know, when you guys are working in the field, it's like the cone of silence. To get anybody to really honestly tell you what's going on, it's tough. Because everybody, it's like the military. Everybody's going to kind of toe the line, and they're not going to tell you what they really think. Because you're retired, you're free to tell us what you think.
That's correct. I am, and I appreciate the opportunity to do so, John. It's a great opportunity. I thank you.
Let's roll some video here of people crossing the border illegally. Now, you tell me if my stat is correct or incorrect. I've always heard that for every one captured, 4 getting through. Is that about what you suspect is pretty close to accurate?
Overall, that's probably true, yes. That's a guess. We really don't know. Statistics are tough when it comes to immigration because there's very few people to go out there and find out how many exactly are in the United States. But the estimate, they've heard that before, I'd say, yeah, you're getting about 1 out of every 4.
Do you think the 11 or 12 million figure in America is accurate, or do you think there's quite a few more?
When I wrote the book, I used a 12 million figure. It could be upwards now of 15 million. Almost 20 million, but nobody really knows.
When you see this stuff, I mean, you know, you see the pictures, it looks like we're all over this problem.
Oh,
and what's amazing is when you go to Arizona down on the border, there are places that are fortified, but boy, you get away from the cities, and the fence just gets progressively worse and worse and worse, and often then you're left with 5 strands of barbed wire or no fence at all.
Not only on the southern border, but we have less than that on the northern border. And the northern border has other significant problems. We've got numbers of Al-Qaeda cells that are possibly operating up in Canada. And terrorists, the LAX bomber, the Millennium bomber, came across Port Washington. So we have that border to worry about. And the other part that no one seems to talk about is the interior of the United States. There is a vacuum of enforcement on the interior. It's almost non-existent.
So if you're able to get in here on a flight or whatever it is, you won't be detected if you end up... You're in. And you're good to go.
You bet, and probably end up getting fraudulent documents and getting a job and welfare and food stamps or whatever else.
Now, let me ask you something. I'm hearing this from sources that there have been many people who have crossed that they have caught with Qurans who are from terrorist nations, and this stuff is really dampened down. They try not to alarm the public with this stuff, but it's happening. True or false?
True. Absolutely true.
What kind of numbers are we talking about?
Well, if it only took 19 to take down 2 World Trade Center buildings.
And they got in here legally. They didn't have to cross a border. I mean, they crossed a border, but they had the visas and all that. They overstayed them, but they got in here legally.
That's correct. Some of them were using fraudulent documents, and they overstayed their visas. But for the most part, yes, we are seeing an increase of individuals coming across from designated countries that we have, problematic countries, let's say, rather than designated.
Do you suspect something's brewing?
I do, yes. I think that they failed with the Christmas bomber, they failed with New York City, and they've seen a few failures, and I think that they're getting ready to strike us to make certain we understand they're still out there and they can still penetrate our security service.
How much concern do you have that we end up down the line in a state that Israel was, it's been lessened by their border wall that they've built, a significant wall, but that we're dealing with weekly incidents, shopping malls, airports, havoc. It's not going to necessarily change America fundamentally, but there will be a feeling of fear out there. Are we heading down that road?
We could be, yes. I won't say for sure that we are, but yes, we could be. If they hit us in the shopping malls and they hit us on a weekly basis, as you suggest, and it's a suicide bomber or whatever, they are able to kill significant numbers of Americans, this fear will spread throughout the United States, yes.
Is there any way to stop it? Can a government get a handle on that?
Yes, I think we can, and we're not doing it. One of the ways that we can do it is to start to profile individuals, whether we like it or not. A white guy in a black car robs a bank. you start looking for white guys in black cars. You don't start looking for everybody and asking everybody. It's just a fact.
Okay, so what does that suggest about our airport security?
Well, that's why I'm making the comment.
I thought so.
I mean,
do you feel like you're in the middle of a Broadway show when you go to the airport?
Of course. Well, I better keep quiet because I go to a lot of airports.
And this, by the way, this is not a knock on the TSA. I want to make that clear.
No.
These guys are doing a tough job that nobody, I mean, it's a thankless job. Yeah. They're doing the best they can. But they're taking orders from above. They're carrying out the will of our politicians and our government. But some of it feels like theater to me.
Well, one of the things that I always talk about is the difference between policy and programs. The policies we get from Washington are fluff. They're words. They're good for the media. They're good for the politicians. But when it comes down to actually the programs that are implemented at the airports, in the interior, wherever they are, that's what we have to be concerned with, and that's where the failure is.
Do you favor the backscatter? Do you favor the enhanced pat-downs? The sanctioned groping, as some have called it? State-sanctioned groping?
Well, it doesn't bother me any, but what bothers me is that they're putting this up as a facade in the front, and then we've got all kinds of stuff that's going on in the back door that's not even being looked at. I mean, I've said before, who's creating the food carts and all that stuff for the airlines? Everybody says, oh, we've got that under control. No, they don't. They don't know who's preparing the food or preparing those carts that are going onto those airplanes. It's done off airport, and it's done by all kinds of people whose status in many cases are never checked.
All right, we're going to take a break here, and when we come back, and you can hold up the book one more time, I'm going to give you another plug here. It's called Immigration Chaos. You want to hold it up?
Yeah.
We'll get one more shot of it. Written by Neville Cramer, who's a retired special agent, INS. And because you're a good guy, I'm giving you 2 plugs today. So
yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate it.
When we come back, Neville's going to talk about actual solutions to some of these problems dealing with illegal immigration. Back in a minute. Retired Special Agent INS, Neville Cramer, our guest on Newsmaker Sunday, with some very interesting observations about what's actually going on the ground, because you did it for, what, 30 years?
26 and a half years total, yeah.
Okay, we talked going into the break, solutions. What are the things that we could do to make this situation better?
Well, obviously, I mentioned employer sanctions on the interior with a cadre of individuals to measures carried out. Border, you get operational control of the border, and that doesn't mean you pour tens of thousands of people down there. You have detention, you have fences, you have all sorts of technology that you can put down there so that if anything moves on that border and comes into the United States, I don't care what it is, you know what it is, and you know whether you have to go down there and stop it. We can do that. We have the technology to do that. But more important than that, let's take a look at Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. and Congress have made immigration a third-level group of agencies under Homeland Security. Immigration impacts agriculture, impacts commerce, impacts the State Department, the Justice Department. Let's elevate immigration to the position that it should be. Give it a cabinet-level agency, and let's have a board like that takes care of the immigration problems of the United States as far as policy is concerned. Get it away from Congress and get it away from the White House, because that's what prevents us from really solving our problems. So we've done it with the Federal Reserve. We can do it with immigration. We should have an immigration review board that takes a look at all the immigration policies and controls what goes on as far as the number of immigrants coming in and out of the United States.
We got a minute left. When you were doing this, did you feel, you must have felt compassion for the people who try to come over here, because they're simply trying to feed their family for the most part, unless they're creating criminal mayhem. And you get a certain amount of that. But did you feel compassion for these people?
That was the toughest part of the job, John, because in law enforcement, you usually have criminals. You usually have individuals that are dealing drugs or they're smuggling weapons or whatever it is. With illegal immigration, it's the person's presence in the United States that's the crime. And you have to understand why they're coming. They're coming, first of all, because we're inviting them in many cases. And the second thing is they're fleeing poverty because they're under these regimes that just won't take care of their own people. So I think it's up to the United States first to deal with our own country, our own sovereignty, our own security, and then let's worry about taking care of Mexico and the rest of the world.
Happy holidays, my friend. Good to see you again.
You bet. Thank you
Neville
very much.
Cramer, retired INS special agent, our guest on Newsmaker Sunday. Thanks again for spending some time with us.